Have you ever wondered what shocking secrets medieval women kept hidden when choosing their lovers? Before we step into this forbidden yet fascinating journey together, take just a moment, hit the like button, tell me in the comments where you are listening from, and make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the mysteries waiting ahead. Now, are you ready? Let us dive into the whispers of the past. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself inside a massive stone castle, somewhere in Europe around the year 1250. The walls are cold, damp, and covered in faded tapestries showing saints, demons, and forgotten battles. The hallways echo with the sound of boots, the laughter of drunken knights, and the faint chanting of monks drifting from a nearby chapel. Yet beneath this world of steel and prayer, there was another world. One woven of secrets, glances, gestures, and choices made by women who were far more clever, daring, and complicated than history books often allow us to believe. People are often told that medieval women were silent, obedient, and trapped inside marriages they could never escape. That story is only half true. The other half is darker, more playful, more human. Behind veils, under heavy gowns, or even hidden in the way they poured a drink, they developed secret codes for choosing men who would become their confidants, their protectors, their forbidden lovers. And those choices could change everything, from the balance of power inside a castle to the rise and fall of entire families. Now here's the shocking part. Their decisions were rarely about romance alone. A woman's choice of lover could be a survival tactic in a brutal world. It could be an act of rebellion against a husband chosen by politics, not passion. And sometimes, yes, it was about raw, unstoppable desire. Because no matter how much society tried to silence them, desire does not vanish under heavy wool cloaks and strict church sermons. Picture a feast in the great hall. Long wooden tables overflow with roasted boar, steaming bread, honey-dripping apples, and goblets of wine. Torches flicker against the walls, and music from a lute floats in the air. Somewhere in the chaos, a noblewoman sits with perfect posture, her face half hidden by the shadows. Her husband laughs loudly, already red from drink, but her eyes are fixed on someone else, a young knight, bold and careless, standing near the fire. He does not dare look back for long, but when he does, his gaze lingers a heartbeat too long. How would she let him know she had chosen him, not with words? Words were too dangerous. Instead, she might shift her goblet slightly toward him, a signal as old as time. Or she might let a silk ribbon slip from her sleeve, landing near his feet. To anyone else, it is an accident. To him, it is a summons. If you were sitting at that table, would you have noticed? Or would you have been lost in the laughter, blind to the storm quietly beginning beneath the surface? But remember, this was not a game without risk. Secrets in the Middle Ages were fragile things. A single rumor could spread through a castle faster than fire through dry straw. Servants whispered. Monks gossiped. Even jesters, those clowns meant to entertain, sometimes acted as spies. A misplaced glance or an overheard giggle could destroy reputations overnight. One wrong move might mean being dragged before a priest, shamed before a community, or locked away in a convent for life. Still, women found ways. Some relied on charms and tokens, tiny carved figures hidden under pillows, herbs slipped into wine, prayers whispered not to God but to older, stranger powers. Others used humor, masking their choices in jokes. Imagine a lady laughing loudly at a knight's clumsy joke, not because it was funny, but because it allowed her to laugh at her husband's side while secretly telling another man, "Yes, I see you." And in these choices lay both danger and liberation. To choose a lover in the Middle Ages was to gamble with destiny. It was to risk everything for one night of passion, or for a lifetime of silent companionship. Sometimes it led to tragedy. Other times it led to legendary romances sung by troubadours across the land. As you drift into this story, think about this. If you had lived in that time with your freedom restricted, your future dictated by others, would you have dared to play the game? Would you have risked your reputation, your safety, maybe even your soul, for the chance to choose someone your heart burned for? That is where our story begins, not in official chronicles or dusty records, but in the shadows between them, in a smile that lingers too long, in a ribbon dropped at the perfect moment, in the whispers only the brave dared to hear, and only the bold dared to follow. Do you believe a flower could decide the course of a forbidden romance in the Middle Ages, Flowers were not only decoration for feast tables or church altars. They were living symbols, codes that whispered where words could not be spoken. When a medieval woman wanted to choose or reject a potential lover, she could use a bouquet as sharp as any dagger, and yet as gentle as a breeze in the meadow. Picture yourself wandering through a bustling medieval market. The air is thick with the smell of fresh bread, goat cheese, and spices carried along the Silk Road. Merchants shout over each other, offering fabrics dyed in exotic colors, while chickens dart between the legs of children. In the middle of this chaos, a woman pauses by a flower stall. To most, she is just buying herbs or blossoms for her chamber. But if you look closer, you will notice something more deliberate. She chooses not simply the brightest bloom, but one with meaning. And the man who receives it will understand exactly what she has chosen. Take the rose, for instance. To us, it is the universal symbol of love. But in the 13th century, its meaning depended on the color, the number of petals, even the way it was given. A single red rose pressed into a man's hand could mean, "I have chosen you." Yet a white rose left on a doorstep might mean purity, not yet, not now. And heaven forbid you were handed a wilted flower that could signal rejection, shame, or even a warning to stay away. Imagine the tension. A man could ride into battle braver than lions, but tremble at the sight of a dying daisy left outside his door. Now think of lavender, often tucked into a lady's sleeve. Its scent lingered, sweet yet sharp, said to stir desire while also warding off evil spirits. If a woman slipped a sprig of lavender to a knight before a tournament, it was more than a token of luck. It was a message: when you return, return to me. Would you have dared to accept it, knowing her husband might be watching from the stands? Medieval women also turned to plants with darker reputations. Rue, for example, a bitter herb, was sometimes given to signal regret or rejection. Basil, strangely enough, carried a reputation of both love and hatred. In Italian folklore, a pot of basil in a woman's window meant she was ready for a suitor. But hand someone basil in secret, that could mean she despised him. One plant, two meanings, dangerous, is not it? Imagine you are that knight again. You enter a lady's chamber after being summoned under the pretext of fixing her window shutters. On the table, you see a small vase, violets and marigolds, carefully arranged. To most men, meaningless. To you, it is a blazing confession. Violets for loyalty, marigolds for passion and grief. Together they whisper, "I am bound to another, but I cannot stop thinking of you." Do you walk away, or do you risk everything to claim what those flowers promise? Of course, not every man could read the floral codes. Some misread them hilariously. A troubadour once sang of a knight who believed he had been chosen because a lady offered him a sprig of parsley. He rode for days, only to discover she had simply wanted him to bring more parsley for her soup. One can almost hear the laughter echoing through the centuries. But make no mistake, for women, flowers were more than comedy. They were lifelines in a world where speaking openly about love could end in ruin. A single bloom could open the door to passion or close it forever. And the church, ironically, often blessed flowers, never realizing they were being repurposed as weapons of seduction under their very noses. So when you see a medieval painting of a woman holding a rose or a lily, do not be fooled into thinking it is just decoration. It could be a snapshot of a scandal, a confession frozen in time. Flowers were not silent ornaments, they were secret messengers of the heart. Now ask yourself, if you were handed a bouquet, knowing it could mean the difference between love and shame, would you have the courage to accept it, or would you let it fall, pretending not to see, and forever wonder what might have been? Do you believe a flower could decide the course of a forbidden romance? In the Middle Ages, flowers were not only decoration for feast tables or church altars. They were living symbols, codes that whispered where words could not be spoken. When a medieval woman wanted to choose or reject a potential lover, she could use a bouquet as sharp as any dagger, and yet as gentle as a breeze in the meadow. Picture yourself wandering through a bustling medieval market. The air is thick with the smell of fresh bread, goat cheese, and spices carried along the Silk Road. Merchants shout over each other, offering fabrics dyed in exotic colors, while chickens dart between the legs of children. In the middle of this chaos, A woman pauses by a flower stall. To most, she is just buying herbs or blossoms for her chamber. But if you look closer, you will notice something more deliberate. She chooses not simply the brightest bloom, but one with meaning. And the man who receives it will understand exactly what she has chosen. Take the rose, for instance. To us, it is the universal symbol of love. But in the 13th century, its meaning depended on the color, the number of petals, even the way it was given. A single red rose pressed into a man's hand could mean, "I have chosen you." Yet a white rose left on a doorstep might mean purity, not yet, not now. And heaven forbid you were handed a wilted flower that could signal rejection, shame, or even a warning to stay away. Imagine the tension. A man could ride into battle braver than lions, but tremble at the sight of a dying daisy left outside his door. Now think of lavender, often tucked into a lady's sleeve. Its scent lingered, sweet yet sharp, said to stir desire while also warding off evil spirits. If a woman slipped a sprig of lavender to a knight before a tournament, it was more than a token of luck. It was a message: when you return, return to me. Would you have dared to accept it, knowing her husband might be watching from the stands? Medieval women also turned to plants with darker reputations. Rue, for example, a bitter herb, was sometimes given to signal regret or rejection. Basil, strangely enough, carried a reputation of both love and hatred. In Italian folklore, a pot of basil in a woman's window meant she was ready for a suitor. But hand someone basil in secret, that could mean she despised him. One plant, two meanings, dangerous, is not it? Imagine you are that knight again. You enter a lady's chamber after being summoned under the pretext of fixing her window shutters. On the table, you see a small vase, violets and marigolds, carefully arranged. To most men, meaningless. To you, it is a blazing confession. Violets for loyalty, marigolds for passion and grief. Together they whisper, "I am bound to another, but I cannot stop thinking of you." Do you walk away, or do you risk everything to claim what those flowers promise? Of course, not every man could read the floral codes. Some misread them hilariously. A troubadour once sang of a knight who believed he had been chosen because a lady offered him a sprig of parsley. He rode for days, only to discover she had simply wanted him to bring more parsley for her soup. One can almost hear the laughter echoing through the centuries. But make no mistake, for women, flowers were more than comedy. They were lifelines in a world where speaking openly about love could end in ruin. A single bloom could open the door to passion or close it forever. And the church, ironically, often blessed flowers, never realizing they were being repurposed as weapons of seduction under their very noses. So when you see a medieval painting of a woman holding a rose or a lily, do not be fooled into thinking it is just decoration. It could be a snapshot of a scandal, a confession frozen in time. Flowers were not silent ornaments, they were secret messengers of the heart. Now ask yourself, if you were handed a bouquet, knowing it could mean the difference between love and shame, would you have the courage to accept it, or would you let it fall, pretending not to see, and forever wonder what might have been? Have you ever woken from a dream so vivid it seemed like a message, something more than just wandering thoughts? In the Middle Ages, people did not dismiss dreams as random. They believed dreams were prophecies, portals into hidden truths, warnings from God or whispers from spirits. And for women, dreams could become a secret compass, guiding them toward a lover or away from disaster. Imagine yourself as a young woman in a candlelit chamber. The shutters are closed, the bed is piled high with wool blankets, and the air smells faintly of beeswax. You have just awakened from a dream, a knight in shining armor, his face half hidden, riding through a storm to reach you. In his hand, he carries a token, a ribbon you know belongs to you. When morning comes, how would you interpret it? In the medieval world, such a dream might mean destiny itself had spoken. Monks and scholars wrote entire manuals on dream interpretation. One 12th century text insisted that if a woman dreamed of fire, it meant passion was coming into her life. If she dreamed of water, it meant sorrow, or sometimes pregnancy. A dream of a bird might mean a new lover, while dreaming of wolves could mean betrayal. To us, it sounds like superstition, but for them, it was as serious as reading the stars. Now think of the secrecy. A woman could never openly declare her desire. But if she whispered to her maid, "I dreamed of roses last night," the meaning was understood. Roses were a sign of love chosen by her own heart. The dream became her coded excuse. It was not I who chose, it was fate. Clever, is not it? Some dreams were even staged. Believe it or not, certain women used herbs like mugwort or mandrake to induce visions. These herbs were said to open the third eye, pulling lovers into dreams so real that women awoke convinced they had touched them. Imagine sipping a bitter tea at dusk, lying down and drifting into a dream where the man you long for bends to kiss your hand. When you wake, the taste of him lingers, and you know you must have him. Was it love or just the herb's trick? Does it matter when the desire feels real? Dreams also became tools for humor. One folk tale tells of a woman who claimed she dreamed her neighbor was destined to be her lover. The poor man blushed, unsure whether to laugh or take it as an invitation. "Do not argue with destiny," she teased. Can you picture the awkward grin on his face as the whole village chuckled? But dreams were not only romantic. They could be warnings, too. A woman might dream of a crumbling tower, then refuse a suitor whose castle walls seemed weak. Another might dream of snakes, then reject a man rumored to be unfaithful. In this way, dreams gave women power, a reason to say no in a society where refusal was rarely tolerated. Now ask yourself, if you lived then, would you have trusted your dreams? Suppose you dreamed of someone forbidden, your husband's rival, your lord's enemy, or a stranger you glimpsed once at market. Would you act on it, believing destiny had chosen him for you? Or would you hide it, fearing your dream might expose more than your heart could bear? In the medieval world, dreams blurred the line between the possible and the forbidden. They gave women a secret stage where desire could play freely, a space where choices could be made without ever speaking aloud. And when morning came, the dreamer could decide to forget or to follow. That is the danger and the beauty of dreams. They vanish like smoke, yet sometimes leave marks deeper than any waking moment. Have you ever thought your blood might reveal your destiny? In the Middle Ages, people believed it could. Blood was not just a liquid that kept you alive. It was a map of character, passion, and fate. And when combined with astrology, it became a terrifyingly intimate way for women to choose or to reject the men who sought them. Picture the flicker of candlelight inside a chamber draped with heavy curtains. A woman sits with her maid, whispering about the knight who has caught her eye. She does not ask, is he handsome or is he wealthy? Instead, she wonders, what sign was he born under? Does his blood run hot or cold? For her, these were not silly questions. They were life or death calculations, whispered in the same breath as prayers. Medieval medicine followed the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Too much blood, doctors said, made a man bold, lustful, quick to laughter. Too little, and he was weak, melancholy, uninspiring. Imagine women gossiping in the corners of a feast, their eyes measuring the flush on a man's cheeks. Was he vigorous or merely feverish? Could his blood carry the fire of passion, or was it doomed to chill into silence? Astrology wove itself into this tapestry. A man born under Aries might be fiery, a lover who burned bright but short. A Taurus was stubborn, loyal perhaps, but also jealous. Virgo men, they whispered, were too cautious, too calculating to satisfy a woman's secret hunger. Did women truly believe all this? Perhaps not always. But in a world where choices were few, any system that gave a woman control, even the illusion of control, was worth holding on to. Some rituals were almost theatrical. A woman might sneak a drop of her suitor's blood, taken from a cut during a duel or scraped from a hunting accident, and mix it with herbs. If it bubbled when set near the fire, it meant passion. If it dried quickly, it meant his desire would fade. You might laugh at such tests now, but to them it was as real as reading the stars above. Imagine being that man. You fight bravely in a tournament, your arm nicked by a rival's blade. Later, the lady you secretly admire sends her maid to tend your wound. What you do not realize is that the maid carries a cloth spotted with your blood back to her mistress. That night, by lamplight, the woman stares at the crimson stain, whispering charms over it, asking the heavens whether you are destined to be hers. Would you still sleep peacefully, knowing your very lifeblood was being used to decide your future? Humor found its way into this practice too. There are tales of women rejecting suitors by saying, "Your blood is too cold, I would rather marry a fish." Imagine the man's face caught between insult and confusion. Did she mean his temperament, his astrological chart, or simply that he was boring? Perhaps all three. But beneath the laughter lay serious risk. The church condemned blood rituals as superstition, sometimes even as witchcraft. A woman caught using blood to divine love might face accusations far more dangerous than gossip. Yet the practice continued, whispered from mother to daughter, hidden in kitchens and gardens. Because for some, blood was the truest truth. It never lied, never concealed. And so, blood and astrology became twin guides for secret choices. When passion burned too dangerously to speak aloud, women turned to the stars and to the crimson drops of life itself. They asked the heavens, "Will this man bring joy or ruin? Will his fire warm me or burn me to ashes?" Now I ask you, if you lived in that time and someone told you your blood carried the key to another's desire, would you let them read it, or would you guard it fiercely, afraid of what secrets it might reveal? What if I told you that the faintest scent could tip the scales of desire in the Middle Ages? In a world where women's voices were often muted, fragrance became their hidden weapon. Perfumes and oils drawn from herbs, flowers, and even stranger ingredients were more than luxuries. They were coded messages, secret spells, invisible threads pulling men closer or warning them away. Close your eyes and imagine a medieval chamber. The rushes on the floor are sprinkled with lavender and thyme, releasing faint perfume when stepped upon. Candles burn low, the smoke of resin curling upward. A noble woman prepares for a feast, but instead of jewels, she reaches for a vial of oil pressed from roses and spiced with cinnamon. When she walks into the hall, her scent travels before her, subtle, impossible to ignore. To some it says, "I am ready." To others it whispers, "Stay away." Perfume was power. In medieval belief, scent did not just please the nose, it touched the soul. Physicians claimed certain aromas balanced the body's humors, calming rage or awakening passion. Priests burned incense believing it could purify sin. But women, clever and quiet, used those same ideas for their own ends. Consider musk, imported at great cost from the East. To the untrained, it smelled heavy, animalistic. But to women who knew its secret, musk was intoxicating. A drop dabbed on the skin could linger for hours, binding itself to memory. If a woman brushed past a man while wearing it, he might think of her long after, the scent haunting him like a ghost. Would you resist, or would you chase that fragrance into the night? Some scents carried warnings. Rue, sharp and bitter, could be worn to say, "Do not approach." Rosemary, often used at weddings, signaled fidelity, but slip too much of it into oil, and it was said to ward off unwanted advances. Imagine a woman forced into a marriage she despised, yet able to coat herself in a perfume that made her husband recoil, without knowing why. A silent rebellion hidden in fragrance. Perfume also held danger. Many recipes blurred the line between medicine and poison. Mandrake root, henbane, even drops of mercury were sometimes mixed into oils. Worn carefully, they gave the body a magnetic allure. Worn carelessly, they could sicken or kill. Whispers spread of women who chose their lovers with scent, and eliminated rivals with the same. Could a single kiss, sweetened by perfume, carry both love and death? And then there were the playful tricks. A story from France tells of a lady who smeared garlic oil on her wrist before meeting a boastful knight. When he kissed her hand, he gagged so violently the whole hall erupted in laughter. Was it rejection? Yes. But it was also survival, wrapped in humor. Perfume was memory made physical. A man might forget a woman's words, but never the way she smelled on a cold night by the fire. Women knew this. They learned to craft their own scents, blending herbs in secret, locking recipes away. In those hidden bottles lay choices: who would be drawn near, who would be repelled, who would never forget. So think about it. If you lived in that time and someone leaned close to you, their perfume wrapping around your senses, would you trust what you felt, or would you wonder whether you had just been bewitched? Can you imagine love as a game, complete with rules, judges, and even penalties? In the Middle Ages, among the noble courts of Europe, that is exactly how it worked. What we now call courtly love was not simply romance, it was an elaborate social performance, a dance of words, gestures, and riddles where women often held surprising power. And in those noble games, choices of lovers were made not through brute force, but through wit, charm, and a dangerous sense of play. Picture yourself entering a grand hall in southern France, the walls glowing with torchlight, the air filled with music from lutes and flutes. Lords and ladies gather not only for feasting, but also for contests of poetry. Yes, poetry. Troubadours strum their strings and sing of impossible love, while noble women sit with sly smiles, ready to reward the cleverest verses with a glance, a ribbon, or perhaps something far more precious, a secret meeting. Courtly love worked almost like a sport. Men competed by declaring devotion, crafting metaphors as sharp as swords. Women judged, applauding the bold, ridiculing the clumsy. A knight might boast of killing dragons for a lady, but if his rhymes stumbled, the hall erupted in laughter. And if his words truly touched her heart, then her choice was made, quietly, in front of everyone, yet hidden under the veil of art. Imagine you are one of those knights. You have faced steel and blood on the battlefield, yet now you tremble because you must compose a stanza about a woman's smile. You recite it, your voice cracking. She tilts her head, listening. Then, with a playful smirk, she tosses you her sleeve ribbon. The crowd gasps. It is a victory greater than any duel. And yet, to others, it is just part of the game. Only you two know it is real. Historical accounts confirm these rituals. In Eleanor of Aquitaine's court, debates on love were staged like mock trials. Ladies posed riddles. Can true love exist in marriage or only outside of it? Knights argued passionately. Some insisting love was purer when forbidden. The women listened, laughed, judged, and crucially remembered who spoke with wit, with courage, with fire. A misplaced answer could cost a man his chance. A clever one might win him a lover. But there was risk too. Courtly love was thrilling, precisely because it danced on the edge of danger. Husbands watched, priests frowned, and yet the games continued. Why? Because everyone pretended it was only play. A ribbon here, a poem there, nothing serious, nothing binding. At least, that is what they told themselves. Beneath the laughter, real choices were being made, lives entangled in verses and vows. Humor often softened the sharpness. One tale speaks of a lady who challenged 3 knights to compose love poems about her pet falcon. The first praised its wings, the second its hunting skill, but the third, winking, compared its beak to her biting wit. She laughed so hard she dropped her goblet, and from that night he was the one she favored. Can you hear the hall erupt in laughter, while one man secretly walked away with her heart? And what about you? Imagine being drawn into such a game. Would you dare to stand before a hall full of nobles declaring your desire in verse, risking ridicule for the chance of one woman's glance? Would you trust your fate to words instead of swords? In that world, poetry could cut deeper than steel, and a clever metaphor could unlock doors that brute strength never could. Courtly love was a dangerous theater. It offered women the rare chance to choose publicly, under the guise of entertainment. It gave men the illusion of control, while placing them in the hands of judges who smiled sweetly but decided harshly. And it proved something shocking, that in a world built on violence and politics, sometimes the sharpest weapon was not a blade but a poem. Can you picture a hall filled with flickering light, shadows twisting across stone walls, and the sound of music filling the air? In the Middle Ages, the dance was more than entertainment. It was an unspoken language, a stage where women could signal their desires, make their choices, or refuse them, all without uttering a word. And in the shifting glow of torches and candles, shadows became accomplices, hiding what needed hiding, revealing only what a daring glance could catch. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of such a hall. Tapestries hang heavy, the smell of wine and roasted meat still lingers from the feast, but now the tables have been pushed aside. Musicians tune their lutes and fiddles, and the crowd waits for the dancing to begin. The lady of the manor rises first, taking her place at the center. One by one pairs form, and the floor fills with a swirl of movement. To an outsider, it is just a courtly custom. But if you watch closely, you will see the game. Every step, every touch of fingers, every turn of the wrist carries meaning. In a world where women were rarely allowed direct speech in matters of love, the dance was their loophole. A lingering touch during a turn could mean acceptance. A sudden withdrawal a step back meant rejection. A glance over the shoulder, as music quickened, could promise a secret meeting later that night. And because all of this happened under the cover of music and laughter, Husbands, priests, and chaperones could not easily protest. It was all just a dance, or so they told themselves. Historical records mention these subtleties. In Burgundy, a chronicler noted that noble women often chose their partners for the last dance of the night with special care. That final pairing was considered a silent proclamation, a signal to everyone watching. In Italy, poets wrote of dances where women let their sleeves brush against a knight's hand, a sign bolder than any spoken word. Can you imagine how thrilling and terrifying it must have been to risk everything with nothing more than a flick of fabric? Of course, shadows themselves were part of the game. Candlelight was uneven, casting some faces into darkness, highlighting others in sudden brightness. Lovers used this to their advantage. A woman might step deliberately into a darker corner, allowing her chosen man to follow unseen, or she might pause beneath a torch, her face glowing, daring him to notice. It was choreography written not only by musicians, but also by light and shadow. Humor often made its way into these dances. Picture a clumsy knight stepping on his partner's toes, her sharp gasp mistaken by the crowd for outrage, but in truth she whispered, laughing, "You would better make up for that later." Or think of a lady twirling past two men, letting her sleeve catch one and not the other, sparking a rivalry that played out in sword practice the next morning. These moments were gossip fodder for weeks. But danger lurked, too. A misread signal could lead to scandal. A husband might notice a hand held too long. A priest might scowl at too much laughter shared. Some women found themselves accused of sin for nothing more than enjoying a dance. And yet, the risk only heightened the thrill. For a woman, every step on that floor was a gamble, freedom disguised as rhythm, passion wrapped in politeness. Now put yourself there. The music quickens, torches flare, shadows ripple like water on stone. A hand reaches for yours. Do you clasp it tightly, telling the world your choice, or do you let it slip away, safe but unfulfilled? In the Middle Ages, love often lived not in words but in movements, small, fleeting, yet unforgettable. And in the dance of shadows, women found their moment to choose. Have you ever wondered how far someone would go to make sure their love was returned? In the Middle Ages, when choices were limited and marriages were arranged like business contracts, some women turned to forces older and darker than any priest's blessing. They turned to witchcraft, to charms, to whispered spells and secret brews. Love, after all, was dangerous enough, but in the hands of witches it became alchemy, temptation, and sometimes tragedy. Picture a small cottage on the edge of a forest, smoke curling from its chimney, herbs hanging in bundles from the rafters. Villagers call the woman inside a healer, or a witch, depending on whether they love or fear her. To a desperate young lady, trapped in a cold marriage, she is a lifeline. The woman slips inside, places a coin on the table, and asks the forbidden question, "Can you make him love me?" The witch smiles and out come the charms. Powdered rose petals mixed with wine, said to ignite passion. Locks of hair tied together with red thread, buried beneath the threshold to bind two souls. A small satchel of herbs, mugwort, vervain, basil, tucked beneath a pillow to summon dreams of the chosen one. Were these spells real or only superstition? To the women who used them, it hardly mattered. They gave hope, a spark of power in a life where most choices were stolen from them. Some charms were simple, even playful. A woman might slip a man a honey cake baked with a coin inside. If he found it, he was fated to love her. Or she might give him wine infused with cinnamon and nutmeg, spices believed to stir desire. Imagine being that man, raising the cup to your lips, never realizing it carried both sweetness and spell. Would you laugh if you found out, or would you shiver, wondering whether your feelings were truly yours? Other spells were darker. Tales spread of witches who used drops of blood or even graveyard soil to bind lovers. A charm could command love, or more chillingly, obsession. Men enchanted in this way were said to grow restless, unable to think of anyone but the woman who held their charm. Some stories end in passion, others in madness. And behind each, the same dangerous question lingers: was it magic or just the power of belief? The church feared these practices, branding them as witchcraft. Priests thundered from pulpits that love charms were the devil's trick. Yet behind closed doors, women still whispered incantations, still traded recipes, still carried tiny pouches tied at their waists. Even queens were rumored to dabble. Chronicles hint that Eleanor of Castile used perfumed potions not only to entice her husband, but to secure loyalty in a treacherous court. And yes, there was humor too. Imagine a lady slipping a charm under her pillow, only for her husband's hunting dog to drag it out into the hall. The servants laugh, the husband scowls, and the poor woman claims it was just dried herbs. The danger, the embarrassment, the laughter, it all mingled together, making these spells as risky socially as they were spiritually. But beneath the jokes lay truth. Love charms were more than superstition, they were rebellion. They gave women a way to choose, even when society told them they had no choice. If a spell failed, at least she had tried. If it worked, she could claim fate had willed it. Either way, for a moment, she held the power. Now imagine yourself in that world. You are offered a charm, just a ribbon knotted 3 times, a whisper over wine, a sprig of herb in your pocket. Do you accept it, curious to see if desire blooms, or do you refuse, afraid of what chains invisible might bind your heart forever? Have you ever noticed how food carries meaning even today? We give chocolates on Valentine's Day, bake cakes for birthdays, and share meals to show love. But in the Middle Ages, food went far beyond celebration. It became a secret language, especially for women. With every loaf of bread, every goblet of wine, every carefully seasoned stew, a message could be hidden. To those who knew how to read it, food could reveal passion, rejection, even a dangerous invitation. Picture yourself in a medieval banquet hall. The fire roars, meat turns on the spit, and servants carry trays piled with roasted game, pies, and steaming bowls. The table groans under the weight of bread and cheese, while goblets overflow with dark wine. To the casual eye, it is just a feast. But watch more closely. A woman slides a plate toward a man, offering him the choicest cut of meat. She pretends not to notice his glance, yet the gesture is deliberate. In a world where her words are monitored, food becomes her voice. Sweetness often carried the strongest signal. Honey was believed to stir love and desire. A woman might drizzle honey on bread and place it quietly before a man she favored. To others, it was just food. To him, it was an invitation. Cinnamon, imported at great cost, was another powerful spice. A goblet of wine spiced with cinnamon was more than a drink, it was a promise. If you lifted it to your lips, you were accepting her choice. Could you refuse, knowing the room was watching? Not all messages were welcome. Bitter flavors spoke rejection. A dish heavy with sage or rue could mean, stay away. Imagine tasting your stew and realizing too late that the herbs had been chosen not to please you, but to dismiss you. How would you react? Anger, embarrassment, or would you laugh, knowing you had been outplayed at your own table? Some traditions became playful. In parts of France, women baked small cakes with hidden tokens inside. A coin meant fortune, a bean meant ridicule, a nut meant desire. Whoever found the token was bound to its meaning. Picture biting into a pastry, only to discover a hidden almond, while the lady across the table smiles knowingly. Suddenly, you are trapped in a game that only she controls. Food also gave women excuses to meet men secretly. A loaf of bread wrapped in cloth could conceal a hidden note. A flask of wine left at a doorstep could carry more meaning than any letter. And sometimes the meal itself was the meeting. Imagine a woman inviting a trusted knight to taste her new recipe. The dish might be ordinary, but the taste, the shared laughter, the stolen glance made it unforgettable. Of course, there was danger too. The line between love potion and poison was thin. Recipes survive in grim old manuscripts, almonds ground with honey and wine to heat the blood, or powders mixed with broth to bend the will. But add too much of the wrong root, and desire could turn to death. Whispers spread of husbands who never woke after a meal, of rivals silenced by a single sip of spiced wine. For women, food could be freedom or a weapon. Humor, as always, softened the edges. A story tells of a lady who served her suitor bread so hard it cracked his tooth. She laughed and said, "If you can't bite through this, you will never survive me." The hall roared with laughter, but the man returned the next day, tooth aching, heart still eager. Food had become both jest and judgment. So imagine yourself seated at that long wooden table. A plate slides toward you, filled with delicacies. Is it just hospitality or something more dangerous? Do you taste the honey, the spice, the hidden meaning? And if you do you accept the invitation or push it away, risking offense but saving your heart? In the Middle Ages, food spoke louder than words. And for women, It was a secret language they mastered with every feast. Have you ever noticed how rivers seem to hold secrets, even today? People sit by the water to think, to whisper, to cry. In the Middle Ages, rivers were more than landscapes. They were boundaries between villages, veins of commerce, and sacred places believed to carry prayers downstream. And for women, rivers often became the stage for their most dangerous confessions. Picture twilight settling over a medieval town. The marketplace is quiet now, stalls abandoned, the last echoes of church bells fading into dusk. Beyond the walls, the river glimmers silver in the moonlight. Two women walk there together, their cloaks drawn tight against the chill. One is trembling, not from the cold, but from what she is about to admit. She has chosen someone she cannot name in public. Where else could she speak if not here, where only the water listens? Rivers carried symbolism. Flowing water meant change, desire, movement toward something new. To dream of a river was to dream of passion, sometimes forbidden. In England, a superstition held that if you tossed a flower into the current and it floated back to you, your love would return your feelings. If it drifted away, so would he. Can you imagine the suspense of standing on the bank, heart pounding, as the water carried your fate? Confessions by rivers often blurred the line between sacred and profane. Priests baptized converts in rivers, claiming the water washed away sin. Yet at night, the same waters became witnesses to whispered words like, "I cannot live without him." Women clutched each other's hands, asking, "Should I tell him?" They wept, they laughed, they dared. The river swallowed it all, flowing on as if complicit. Some stories hint that women arranged secret meetings by the river's edge. A knight might be told, "Come to the willow tree when the moon is high." There he would find her waiting, shadows hiding her blush. Perhaps she pressed a handkerchief into his hand, damp from the mist. Perhaps they only touched fingers before pulling apart, both terrified and exhilarated. If you had been there, would you have dared to take her hand? Or would the rushing water have reminded you of how quickly secrets can drown? But the river was also treacherous. Gossip flowed as easily as water. A servant might follow, a rival might watch. Tales spread of women caught in embraces by the bank, punished by husbands or priests. Worse still, rivers were dangerous in themselves, swift, cold, merciless. There are legends of women throwing charms into the current, only to slip, their own lives carried away with their secrets. To choose the river was to gamble not only with reputation, but sometimes with survival. Yet still they came. Why? Because the river offered something no hall, no church, no chamber could: freedom. For a moment, standing on the bank, they could confess what they could not speak at a table. They could admit longing, shame, rebellion, desire. And the river, steady and eternal, promised to carry it away, leaving them lighter, whether or not anyone ever knew. Humor sometimes crept in, too. One tale tells of a woman who whispered her love into the river, only for a fisherman hiding in the reeds to hear every word. The next day, the whole village knew, and the poor woman laughed through her tears. "The river betrayed me to a man with muddy boots." Even so, the story lived on, half tragedy, half comedy. So imagine yourself there, standing in the cool night, listening to the water's murmur. You hold a flower in your hand. Do you cast it into the current, daring fate to answer you? Do you whisper the name you have never said aloud? Or do you stay silent, letting the river keep its secrets while you keep yours? In the Middle Ages, rivers were not only lifelines of land, they were lifelines of love. And many a choice, many a whispered vow, was carried downstream into the dark. Can you imagine a night when identity itself could vanish, when rank and duty could be hidden behind a mask? In the Middle Ages, such nights existed. Festivals where women cloaked their faces, loosened their manners, and seized a freedom they rarely tasted in daily life. These were the masked festivals, and in their chaos, shocking choices were made. A woman could select her lover in plain sight, while no one, not even her husband, could accuse her. After all, how can you prove who is behind the mask? Picture the town square lit with torches, bonfires blazing high into the cold night. The air smells of smoke and ale, meat sizzling on spits. Musicians play wild tunes while jugglers toss flaming torches into the air. But the real spectacle is the crowd: peasants, knights, even nobles, all masked, their faces hidden by painted wood or carved leather. In such a crowd, a lady's veil no longer marked her as a wife, a sister, a noblewoman. She was simply another shadow, free to play. And what games they played! A masked woman could approach a man and slip her hand into his without fear. She could whisper, "Meet me by the well when the bells strike midnight," and no one could say for certain who had spoken. If she pressed an apple into his palm, it was not just fruit, it was a choice, a signal he had been marked. If you were that man, would you have dared to go, knowing the wrong guess could mean scandal or worse? Chroniclers tell us that in Venice, carnival masks were so effective that entire affairs were conducted under their cover. In France, the Feast of Fools allowed women to mock priests, dance with strangers, even trade clothes with men for the night. Imagine the shock and the laughter when a knight reached to embrace his brother in arms, only to discover it was the lady he secretly admired. But behind the humor lurked danger. Masks gave freedom, but also temptation. Some women chose boldly, letting their gestures leave no doubt. Others found themselves pursued by men emboldened by anonymity. A hand too rough, a word too sharp, and the festival could turn from thrilling to threatening. That was the gamble, to risk disgrace for a taste of liberty. Yet for many women, the masked festival was worth the risk. For one night, they were not confined to kitchens or pews. For one night, they could be hunters, not prey. A noblewoman might dance wildly with a peasant, laughing at the absurdity. A widow might choose a suitor young enough to be scandalous. A married lady might press her mask close to a forbidden knight's and whisper a vow she would never dare by daylight. And when dawn came, the mask could be burned, the secret carried into silence. Humor colored these nights too. One tale tells of a lady who dressed as a jester, complete with bells on her cap. She teased every man she met, then slipped a kiss onto the lips of the very priest who had preached against lust that morning. The crowd howled, the priest blushed crimson, and the lady disappeared into the throng, her identity never revealed. Did the priest dream of that kiss for years? Probably. Masks were not only wood and cloth, they were permission. Permission to choose, to rebel, to be someone else, if only for a few hours. And in that brief window, women seized power that daylight denied them. Some found lovers, some found laughter. Some found nothing more than the thrill of being free, but all found possibility. Now imagine yourself there, lost in the crowd. A masked figure presses close, slips a ribbon into your hand, then vanishes. Do you follow, heart racing, ready to risk everything for the mystery? Or do you stay, safe but forever wondering who chose you that night? In the Middle Ages, masks did more than hide faces. They revealed desires that could not be spoken. And in the festivals of shadows and fire, women dared to choose. Have you ever held a letter and wondered what secrets might be hidden between the lines? In the Middle Ages, letters were not just words on parchment, they were lifelines, weapons, and sometimes the only way women could choose and confess love. But because eyes were always watching, husbands, priests, even rival servants, letters had to be written in code. And those codes turned the act of writing into a game of shadows, where every word could mean two things. Picture a candlelit chamber late at night. A woman sits at a small desk, quill trembling in her hand. She dips it into ink, pauses, then begins. The roses in our garden bloom early this year. To anyone else, it is harmless talk of flowers. But to the man who receives it, the message is clear. Meet me soon. Every sentence must carry this double weight, safe for outsiders, dangerous for the two who know. Medieval women became masters of coded writing. Some used acrostics, every first letter of each line spelling out a name. Others hid symbols in the margins. A star meant hope, a crescent moon meant secrecy. A heart drawn small enough to be missed by careless eyes meant desire. Even the way wax was sealed told a story. A seal broken too easily meant betrayal. A seal pressed deep and firm meant loyalty. Imagine opening such a letter, your pulse racing, trying to decode not just the words, but the silences, the shapes, the touch of the hand that wrote it. But the danger was immense. Letters could be intercepted. A maid might slip it into the wrong hands, a jealous rival might read it aloud. There are tales of women dragged before courts, accused of adultery because of nothing more than a line too sweetly written. And yet they still wrote. Why? Because sometimes a letter was the only place they could truly speak. Some codes were surprisingly playful. In France, a woman might send her knight a recipe for a pie, each ingredient's first letter spelling out his name. In Italy, women tucked pressed flowers between pages, each with its meaning: rosemary for remembrance, violet for faithfulness, ivy for desire. Imagine receiving a letter that smells faintly of lavender, the petals falling into your lap as you unfold it. Would your hands tremble as you read, knowing the perfume itself was the real confession? Humor, too, softened the risk. One story tells of a woman who wrote to her lover, using Latin phrases so clumsy that when intercepted, the priest thought it was a child's school exercise. Only the intended man knew that amo piscem magnum, I love a big fish, was really a silly code for I long for you tonight. Can you hear her laughter as she sealed the letter, daring him to read between the lines? But codes were not just whimsy, they were survival. For women whose choices were bound by contracts and vows, a coded letter gave them back a fragment of agency. It was a way to choose, silently, bravely, dangerously. Each word was both shield and sword. Now imagine yourself as the recipient. You unfold the parchment, read the neat lines of script, and realize they speak directly to you, though no one else would suspect. Do you answer? Do you risk writing back, adding your own hidden signals, or do you stay silent, fearing that even the ink could betray you? In the Middle Ages, love was often written not in open vows but in hidden codes. And for women, the quill became both a risk and a key, the power to confess what their lips could never say aloud. Have you ever heard a song that stayed with you long after it ended, haunting you like a whisper in the dark? In the Middle Ages, music carried more than entertainment. It was a weapon, a secret message, and for women, a way to choose their lovers without saying a word. A single melody could inflame hearts, hide vows, or expose secrets that words could never risk. Picture a great hall after supper. The torches burn low, wine stains the table, and the crowd leans in as a troubadour tunes his lute. He begins to sing of a lady with golden hair, of a knight who rides through storms for her love. Most guests smile politely, thinking it only a tale. But the lady herself knows better. She paid for the song, and in every lyric, hidden among rhymes, lies her choice, her secret message to the man sitting across the hall. Can you imagine the thrill of hearing your name disguised as a metaphor, knowing the song itself is her confession? Music was dangerous because it was public. Words spoken in a letter could be hidden, but a song echoed across every ear. That was its power and its risk. Troubadours became conspirators, carrying love not just in their voices but in their discretion. A woman might hire one to sing beneath her window, the melody declaring what her lips could not. If her husband asked, she could shrug, "It is only music." But she and her chosen man knew otherwise. Even instruments carried signals. The harp's soft notes often meant intimacy, the drum meant urgency, the flute meant secrecy. In some courts, women used dances set to particular tunes as coded invitations. A knight chosen to lead a dance to a certain melody might know he was more than a partner, he was desired. Imagine being that knight, heart pounding, pretending it was only ceremony, while every note whispered otherwise. Of course, not all songs were tender. Some mocked. A woman could reject a suitor by commissioning a bawdy verse about his clumsiness, sung aloud for the whole hall. Others teased with riddles hidden in lyrics. "The one I love wears green on Thursdays." Half the men in the room turned crimson while everyone laughed. Was it cruel, perhaps? But it gave women a weapon sharper than any sword, laughter. And then there was the danger of discovery. Priests warned that love songs corrupted the soul. Some rulers even banned certain tunes, fearing they stirred too much desire. In one chronicle, a bishop accused a lady of adultery, simply because a troubadour had sung outside her chamber too often. Imagine being condemned not for an act, but for a melody floating through your window. Yet women persisted. Why? Because music was irresistible. It moved hearts faster than sermons, carried secrets safer than whispers, and gave them the freedom of expression denied by law and custom. A woman could not stand in the market and declare her love, but she could let a song do it for her. Humor often softened the risk. One tale tells of a lady who taught her parrot to whistle the first notes of her lover's tune. Whenever her husband left, the bird sang, summoning the night like a feathered accomplice. One day the bird sang too soon and the husband stormed in. But instead of fury he laughed, saying, "Even the bird mocks me." The lovers were spared, all thanks to music's disguise. Now place yourself in that hall, the melody rising, the words winding through air like smoke. Do you hear only a song, or do you catch the hidden message meant just for you? Do you answer it with your eyes, your steps, your silence, or do you pretend you never noticed? Letting the music pass like a ghost. In the Middle Ages, music was never only music. It was a confession wrapped in rhyme, a dagger hidden in harmony, a choice sung boldly yet secretly. And for women, it was one of the most dangerous and powerful ways to love. Have you ever thought of jewelry as more than decoration? In the Middle Ages, rings, brooches, and pendants were more than glittering ornaments. They were coded messages, talismans, and sometimes weapons of choice in the silent game of love. A jewel could bind a promise, break a suitor's hope, or mark a lover as chosen, all without a single word being spoken. Picture a great hall alive with light from dozens of candles. Nobles wear heavy robes, their hands glittering with rings, their cloaks fastened with gleaming brooches. To the untrained eye, it is only wealth on display. But look closer. A woman fingers the emerald on her chest, letting it catch a knight's gaze across the room. It is not vanity. It is signal. Emeralds were believed to reveal truth, to glow brighter in the presence of love. By wearing it, she is daring him to notice, daring him to act. Rings were especially powerful. A ring slipped onto a man's finger was no casual gesture, it was a silent claim. Some women commissioned rings, engraved with mottos only a chosen man would understand. Imagine receiving such a token, plain to everyone else. But to you, it carries a line of poetry known only between you and her. Would you wear it boldly, risking discovery, or hide it, pressing it to your lips in secret moments? Brooches and pendants, too, carried meaning. A heart-shaped brooch might seem obvious, but a clasp of ivy leaves meant fidelity, while a crescent moon hinted at secrecy. Women used them like a private language, visible only to those they wanted to read it. Even the way jewelry was worn told stories. A necklace hidden under fabric meant denial. The same necklace drawn into the open meant invitation. History offers striking examples. In the 14th century, Queen Anne of Bohemia was said to gift her favorites with jeweled belts, a mark not only of favor but of intimacy. Chronicles describe noble ladies who gave knights a jewel before tournaments, a token that transformed the fight into something more than sport. Can you imagine riding into battle with a sapphire at your chest, knowing it was not just decoration but a woman's choice burning against your skin? Of course, jewelry could also wound. To return a gift of gold was a rejection so sharp it cut deeper than steel. Some women turned suitors away by handing back brooches with a smile that said, "No." Others played crueler games, giving one ring to two men, watching rivalry ignite. In such cases, jewelry became fire, sparking feuds that echoed for years. Danger always lingered. The church warned against jewels used for lust. Priests claimed that women enchanted their jewelry with spells, stones polished with blood, charms whispered over silver. To wear such a piece was to risk accusation of witchcraft. Yet this only made jewels more tempting. A pendant could be both ornament and amulet, protection and provocation. And humor, as always, found a place. A tale tells of a lady who tricked her pompous suitor by giving him a ring far too small, forcing him to wear it painfully tight. When he boasted of her favor, everyone laughed at his swollen finger. Her message was clear: you are not the one. Jewelry could humiliate as easily as it could enthrall. So imagine yourself in that hall, candlelight dancing on gold and silver. A woman across the room lifts her hand, a ruby flashing in the firelight. Is it chance, or is it signal? Do you step forward, accepting the challenge, or remain still, wondering forever if the jewel was meant for you? In the Middle Ages, jewelry was never just decoration. It was a silent language, a dangerous gift, and sometimes the very tool by which women dared to choose their lovers. Have you ever walked through a garden at night and felt that every leaf, every flower seemed to be listening? In the Middle Ages, gardens were not only places of beauty, but sanctuaries of secrecy. Behind monastery walls, inside castle courtyards, or hidden beyond village hedges, gardens became stages for dangerous meetings and silent choices. For women, these forbidden gardens were often the only places where love could breathe. Picture a walled garden behind a manor house. Moonlight glimmers on the dew-soaked grass, the air thick with the scent of roses and lilies. A woman in a heavy gown moves quietly among the hedges. She pauses at a fountain, its water catching starlight, and waits. Soon a shadow slips through the gate, a man who should not be here. To others, this garden is a patch of earth. To them it is freedom, danger, and desire. Gardens carried powerful symbolism. In medieval poetry, the locus amoenus, the pleasant place, represented paradise, temptation, even forbidden knowledge. Flowers were never just flowers. A rose meant passion, a lily meant purity, ivy meant eternal devotion. Women used these symbols with precision, arranging bouquets as coded invitations. Handing a man a cluster of violets was not innocent, it was a declaration. Can you imagine the thrill of receiving such a gift, knowing it risked scandal if anyone understood? Some gardens were designed with secrecy in mind. Hedges cut into labyrinths, benches hidden behind walls, fountains that muffled whispers. Chronicles describe noblewomen leading their lovers through mazes of green, ensuring privacy while pretending to admire the landscaping. Even monastery gardens, meant for prayer, sometimes became sites of temptation. A nun might pluck herbs at twilight while speaking softly to a man through the iron bars. Every leaf became witness. But danger was always near. Servants spied, rivals followed, rumors spread like pollen on the wind. Tales survive of women caught beneath arbors with men not their husbands, punished not just by shame but by exile. Gardens could be paradise, but also prisons when secrets were discovered. And yet women returned to them. Why? Because gardens gave them choice. A woman could let a man into her garden, literally and symbolically. She could close the gate as rejection, or open it as invitation. Within those walls she controlled who entered, who stayed, who was banished. That was a rare kind of power in a world built to deny it. Humor, too, thrived in gardens. One story tells of a lady who promised her suitor a midnight tryst among the roses. When he arrived, she had already released her geese into the garden. The poor man spent the night hissing and flapping at furious birds while she laughed from the window. Her message was clear: he was not her chosen one. The village laughed for weeks. But other tales end in passion. A knight climbing a garden wall at night, scraping his hands bloody on the stones just to steal a kiss beneath the vines. A widow leaving a gate unlocked, her heart pounding as she waited on the bench by the fountain. Gardens held not only beauty, but danger, humor, rebellion, and fire. So imagine yourself stepping into such a place. The night air is cool, the flowers heavy with scent, the fountain murmurs like a secret. Someone waits for you among the hedges. Do you go to them, risking discovery? Do you turn back, safe but empty? Or do you wander alone, wondering forever what might have happened among the roses? In the Middle Ages, forbidden gardens were not just patches of earth. They were theaters of choice, where women dared to risk everything beneath the cover of petals and leaves. Have you ever wondered what people will risk to know the future? In the Middle Ages, when love was bound by duty and marriage was often a contract, women sometimes turned to fortune tellers. These figures, part healer, part mystic, part outlaw, offered glimpses of fate, and in their smoky huts, women whispered the most dangerous question of all: which man should I choose? Picture a crooked little house at the edge of a village. Herbs hang from the rafters, smoke curls from a small fire, and a woman with lined hands lays cards across a table. A nervous young wife leans forward, her heart racing. She cannot ask her priest. She cannot ask her husband. But here, with coins clinking onto the table, she dares to ask about love. The fortune teller's eyes glint in the firelight as she turns a card, showing two lovers beneath an arch. To the young wife, it is not cardboard, it is destiny. Fortune tellers used many tools. Some read the stars, mapping Mars and Venus to predict passion. Others used bones or runes, scattering them like dice across the dirt. In France, a popular method was love divination with apple peels. A woman would toss a peel over her shoulder, and the shape it formed was said to reveal her future husband's initial. Simple, yes. But in a world where choice was rare, even small rituals felt like rebellion. Of course, such acts were dangerous. The church condemned fortune-telling as heresy. Women caught consulting seers could be accused of witchcraft. Tales tell of wives hauled before inquisitors, forced to admit they had asked questions of the heart. Yet still they came. Why? Because the risk was worth the possibility of certainty. Even a single whispered answer, yes, he loves you, or no, he never will, was enough to give courage or closure. Some stories reveal humor, too. One fortune teller, tired of constant questions, began telling every woman that her true love wore boots. In a village where every man owned boots, the prediction was always true. Women laughed, but they kept coming, desperate for the smallest sign. Another tale describes a girl, told she would marry a man taller than a barrel. She replied, "Thank heavens, I feared he might be shorter." The hut erupted in laughter, but the girl left smiling, comforted by nonsense. Yet many took divination seriously. Women sometimes followed advice with boldness that shocked their peers. One noble lady was told by a seer that her true love would appear beneath the oak tree at sunset. She went there every evening until at last a night truly did approach. Was it prophecy fulfilled or her own determination? Either way, she believed. But the danger was real. To ask questions of fate was to risk entangling with frauds or worse, with accusations of sin. A woman might be betrayed by the very fortune teller she trusted, her secrets sold to rivals. And still, countless hearts whispered their longing into smoke and cards, willing to gamble their reputations for hope. So imagine yourself in that hut, the firelight flickering, the smell of herbs sharp in your nose. The fortune teller leans close, her voice low. There are two paths before you. One leads to safety, the other to passion. Which will you take? Do you laugh and dismiss it, or does your heart pound, believing destiny itself has spoken? In the Middle Ages, fortune tellers stood trial in courts and in whispers alike, and for women, they offered not only glimpses of the future, but a chance to choose, however secretly, however dangerously, the lovers their hearts desired. Have you ever thought of hunting not just as sport, but as theater? In the Middle Ages, the hunt was more than chasing deer or boar. It was spectacle, ritual, and hidden beneath the clash of horns and hounds, a stage for love. For women, the hunt became both opportunity and danger, a chance to choose in the open air what they could not confess in halls. Picture a crisp morning, the forest damp with dew. Horns sound, dogs bark, horses stamp impatiently. Lords and ladies ride side by side, cloaks sweeping over saddles. At first, it seems all about the chase. But watch carefully. A lady allows her horse to fall behind, drawing a particular knight closer. She laughs, pretends to struggle with her reins, and in that small pause, the two share words no one else hears. Is it accident or design? Hunting was a rare occasion when men and women shared freedom. Away from walls and priests, roles blurred. A woman might hand a knight her falcon, letting him hold it as if testing his worth. If he returned it gently, she smiled. If he fumbled, perhaps he was not her choice. Small acts, passing a bow, tying a strap, became coded auditions in the theater of the woods. Symbols of the hunt carried meaning, too. A dropped glove meant desire, a broken arrow meant rejection, a ribbon tied to a spear meant promise. One tale tells of a lady who tied her veil to a knight's lance during a hunt. When he returned victorious with a stag, her veil was stained with blood. To her it was not ruin but bond, his triumph was hers, his danger shared. Can you imagine the thrill of such a gesture? But danger was not only symbolic. Hunts were perilous. Boars gored men, horses stumbled, arrows missed their mark. A woman who lingered near a knight risked not only gossip, but her life. Yet perhaps that risk was part of the attraction. To share danger was to share intimacy. A knight pulling her onto his saddle to escape a charging stag could become, in memory, a lover's embrace. Priests warned against such wild games. They claimed the hunt was excuse for lust, that women's laughter among trees was sin itself. Some courts even set rules. Women must not ride alone with men, must not wander into the forest shadow. But rules crumble when the horn sounds and hooves pound. The forest does not care for laws. Humor colored the hunts as well. One tale tells of a lady who promised to kiss whichever knight caught the first hare. When the poor creature darted between horses, half the men tumbled into mud, scrambling like boys. The winner arrived dripping, clutching the hare, and the lady kept her promise, laughing as his face was smeared with dirt. For weeks the story spread, more famous than any stag hunt. But sometimes, hunts ended in tragedy. A jealous lord following too closely, a rival knight cutting across paths. Suddenly, the game became deadly serious. Some chronicles hint at accidents that were not accidents at all. And women, caught in the middle, could find their choices leading to blood rather than love. Still, they returned to the forests. Why? Because there, amid danger and laughter, women could step outside their roles. They could hint, signal, test, choose. A forest clearing became a stage, a ribbon became a vow, a shared gallop became a confession. So imagine yourself there, breath steaming in the morning air, hounds baying in the distance. A woman rides beside you, her eyes bright. She drops a ribbon into your hand. Is it mere accident or an invitation? Do you chase the stag, or do you chase the meaning of her gift? In the Middle Ages, hunts were not only about prey. They were about choices, dangerous, thrilling, and unforgettable, that women made in the shadow of the trees. Have you ever chosen your clothes for the day, not just for fashion, but for meaning? Even now, we wear black to mourn, white to wed, red to stand out. In the Middle Ages, colors were far more than decoration. They were powerful codes, carrying hidden signals. For women, colors became a way to choose lovers, to invite, to reject, to confess, all without speaking a word. Picture a bustling marketplace. Women move between stalls, their gowns sweeping over the cobblestones. To the casual eye, it is only fabric and dye. But watch closely. A lady in deep red passes by, her eyes catching a knight's for only a moment. Red, the color of passion, was both warning and invitation. By wearing it, she dared to say what she could never voice. Did she choose him, or did she dare him to choose her? Each color carried weight. Blue symbolized loyalty and purity. When a woman wore it, she hinted at constancy. Green suggested youth, fertility, even mischief. Yellow could mean joy, but also jealousy or betrayal. Black spoke of mourning, but could also mean defiance, a refusal to conform. Imagine standing in a crowded hall, every woman's dress shouting secret meanings to those who could read them. Would you know who had chosen you? Colors were not chosen lightly. Dyes were costly, some imported from distant lands. A gown of scarlet meant wealth as much as passion. A touch of saffron yellow hinted at exotic trade. Indigo blue required rare plants and careful hands. When a woman selected a color, she was not only dressing her body, she was painting her heart in cloth. Some used colors to speak in sequence. A lady might wear green on one day to signal availability, blue the next to hint at devotion, red on the third to make her passion undeniable. To outsiders, she was simply fashionable. To her chosen man, she was carrying on a conversation with every garment. Of course, mistakes happened. One tale tells of a woman who wore yellow to tease her lover, only for him to take it as jealousy. He sulked for weeks before she finally laughed and explained, it was only joy. Another story describes a knight who misread a lady's black gown as mourning, when in fact it was her boldest invitation. Imagine the confusion, the frustration, and the thrill of realizing the truth too late. Colors could also wound. To wear white to a feast where a man expected you in red was a silent rejection. To remove a colored ribbon he had given you and replace it with another man's gift was sharper than words. In courts where words were forbidden, colors became knives. And as always, humor brightened the danger. One lady was said to wear every color at once, patched like a jester, to confuse all her suitors. Guess if you can, she laughed, while men argued themselves into madness. Another dyed her dog's fur with saffron, letting it trot beside her as a walking signal of wealth and whimsy. The crowd roared with laughter, but her chosen man knew the truth. The dog's ribbon color was meant for him. So imagine yourself in a medieval hall, banners hanging, gowns swirling, torches gleaming off silk and velvet. Across the room, a woman meets your eye. She wears green, with a single strip of red ribbon at her sleeve. Do you understand? Do you cross the floor, risking scandal? Or do you remain still, forever wondering if that color was meant for you? In the Middle Ages, colors were never just colors. They were secret words, hidden choices, a language stitched into cloth. And for women, they were a bold way to love when voices could not speak. Have you ever felt how a dance can say more than words? In the Middle Ages, when voices were bound by rules and love was often forbidden, dance became a silent language. Beneath candlelight and torchfire, in crowded halls where music echoed against stone walls, women stepped into shadows and let their feet, their hands, their eyes choose what their lips could not. Picture a feast in a great hall. The tables have been cleared, musicians tune their lutes and fiddles, and nobles form circles beneath banners fluttering in the firelight. A lady steps forward, her gown swaying, her veil trailing like mist. She offers her hand, not to her husband, but to the knight across the room. Gasps ripple, but the dance begins. In that moment, she has chosen, and every step is a declaration. Would you have dared to take her hand, knowing the whole hall watched? Every gesture carried meaning. A glance over the shoulder could signal invitation, a step backward rejection. To brush fingers was bolder than any kiss. Women used these dances as tests, weaving messages into movements. A suitor who moved with grace matching her rhythm proved his worth. One who stumbled or pressed too close risked rejection in front of all. The dance was trial, theater, and confession all at once. Some dances were playful, masks and ribbons fluttering as partners changed with the music. A woman could slip a ribbon from her sleeve into a man's palm during a spin, unseen by others. That ribbon was not just cloth, it was choice. Imagine the thrill of discovering it in your hand, knowing she had marked you in plain sight, yet no one else knew. But danger lurked in the steps. Priests condemned dancing as temptation, claiming shadows in torchlight made sin thrive. Rules were made, certain dances banned, certain gestures forbidden. Yet women defied them. The darker the hall, the freer they became. In shadows eyes met, promises formed, secrets whispered through movement. Chronicles speak of scandalous dances. At a French court, a lady twirled so boldly that her veil flew into her lover's hands. The court laughed, but the truth was revealed. In Germany, masked dances allowed women to swap partners freely, creating nights of mystery where no one knew who touched whose hand. For women, such moments were rebellion wrapped in music. Humor often softened the danger. One tale tells of a woman who stepped deliberately on her suitor's toes each time he lied to her. By the end of the night he limped home, and the hall roared with laughter. Another danced so wildly that her wig flew off, landing on the bishop's head. The crowd erupted, the bishop sputtered, and the woman smiled, her secret signal delivered in chaos. Yet for many, dancing was more than jest. It was the only time a woman could choose openly, if only for the length of a song. In one corner of the hall, her life might be bound by duty, but in the circle of the dance, beneath shadows and music, she was free. So imagine yourself there, music rising, shadows flickering across the walls. A woman steps close, her hand brushing yours as the circle turns. Is it only accident or invitation? Do you follow her lead, risking scandal for the chance at passion? Or step away, safe but forever wondering? In the Middle Ages, dances were not only steps on a floor. They were shadows woven into music, a language of choice, a stage where women dared to speak without speaking at all. Have you ever taken a journey that promised one thing but delivered another? In the Middle Ages, pilgrimages were meant to be journeys of faith, long weary treks to holy shrines, relics, and cathedrals. But for many women, beneath the prayers and hymns lay another possibility: freedom. Far from home, away from the eyes of husbands, priests, and kin, pilgrimages offered rare space to choose, to confess, even to love. Picture a dusty road winding toward a distant abbey. Pilgrims in rough cloaks shuffle forward, staffs in hand, scallop shells pinned to their hats as signs of devotion. Among them walks a lady, her fine gown hidden under wool, her veil shading her face. To others, she is just another traveler seeking salvation. But inside her heart races, not for relics, but for the man walking 2 rows ahead, his stride steady, his voice rising in song. A pilgrimage, for her, is not only about heaven, it is about daring to choose on earth. Pilgrimages mixed every class. Nobles and peasants walked side by side, eating from the same pots, sleeping in the same inns. Rank blurred on the road. A woman who could never speak to a knight in her lord's hall might share bread with him beneath a tree. A widow might laugh with a monk, her veil slipping in the sunlight. Freedom, disguised as piety, gave women choices they could never claim at home. Symbols abounded. To hand someone water at a well was more than kindness, it was an invitation. To walk beside a man through 3 milestones was considered a bond. Pilgrim badges, small tokens bought at shrines, became secret gifts. A woman pressing a tin cross into a man's hand meant, "Remember me beyond this road." Imagine holding such a token, knowing it carried more than devotion. But danger traveled with them. Priests condemned carnal pilgrimages, warning that too many romances bloomed on holy roads. Chronicles complain of women who left home for Canterbury or Compostela, and returned with children instead of relics. Some were shamed, others punished, yet still they went. Why? Because the road was freedom, and freedom was worth risk. Humor colored the journeys, too. One tale tells of a woman who pretended to limp so she could lean on a handsome fellow pilgrim. She miraculously healed when they reached the shrine, and he laughed, realizing he had been chosen as her crutch in more ways than one. Another story speaks of a lady who prayed loudly at every stop, only to whisper softer prayers to her lover at night. God heard me by day, she said, and he heard me by night, though in different ways. Yet pilgrimages could turn dangerous. Bandits prowled roads, storm struck, sickness spread. A woman who sought love on the journey risked more than her soul. She risked her life. But perhaps that danger made the choice sweeter. To share hardship, to hold hands across rivers, to pray side by side in chapels, such bonds were stronger than gold. So imagine yourself on that road, dust rising beneath your feet, bells tolling faintly in the distance. A woman walks beside you, her veil slipping as she glances your way. She presses a pilgrim badge into your palm. Is it only a token of faith, or is it her secret choice? Do you return her gaze, daring to believe this journey means more, or do you keep walking, leaving the meaning behind with the dust? In the Middle Ages, pilgrimages were veils, holy on the surface, but beneath full of choices, confessions, and loves that women dared to make on the open road. Have you ever woken from a dream so vivid that it felt like a message? In the Middle Ages, dreams were not brushed aside as nonsense. They were seen as doors, openings to divine prophecy, to demonic temptation, to truths too dangerous to speak by day. And for women, whose choices were bound by duty and silence, dreams became a secret theater where they could choose their lovers, confess their desires, and even defend them with the excuse, "It came to me in a dream." Picture a candlelit chamber, cold stone walls pressing close. A woman stirs in her bed, tossing beneath heavy blankets. She dreams of a knight's face, of his hand reaching for hers, of a rose blooming in the snow. When she wakes, heart pounding, she whispers to herself, "It is a sign." In her world where her lips dare not speak, her dream has spoken for her. Dreams carried powerful meaning. A white horse meant a noble suitor, a hawk meant passion, a serpent meant betrayal. Books of dream interpretation circulated through monasteries and noble courts, filled with lists of symbols. To dream of water was to dream of desire. To dream of fire was to dream of danger. Women learned these codes, turning every night into a council of fate. Some used dreams as excuses. A woman could tell her husband, "I dreamed you were unfaithful," and mask her suspicion in piety. Another might say, "I dreamed of a man in green," to justify her sudden laughter at a feast. If accused of choosing, she could shrug and say it was only a dream. Yet both she and her lover knew better. Dreams gave women agency in a world that denied it. They could confess in whispers to friends, "Last night I dreamed of him." They could send messages through dream symbols, embroidered on cloth or painted on shields. Imagine a lady presenting a knight with a banner stitched with stars, not decoration, but declaration saying, "I dreamed of us beneath them." But danger lurked in dreams. Priests warned that demons entered women's minds at night, planting lust. Inquisitors sometimes used dreams as evidence of sin, asking women to recount their visions. A dream of a man's embrace could be twisted into confession. Yet women continued to dream boldly, knowing the night was theirs, even if the day belonged to men. Humor colored these stories too. One tale tells of a woman who dreamed her suitor fell into a pigsty. The next day she refused his gift, saying, "I will not love a man who smells of pigs even in dreams." Another dreamed she married a baker and laughed, "At least I shall never go hungry." Dreams gave them not only excuses but laughter, freedom wrapped in absurdity. And sometimes dreams became prophecy. Chronicles tell of ladies who dreamed of knights before meeting them, of roses blooming before weddings, of storms before betrayals. Whether true or not, the stories spread and women leaned into them. A dream, after all, could be shaped into whatever meaning the heart desired. So imagine yourself waking in a medieval bed, the chill of dawn seeping in. You recall a dream, her face, her hand, her whispered name. Do you dismiss it as foolishness, or do you hold it close, believing fate itself spoke while you slept? Do you act upon it, risking scandal, or do you bury it, letting it fade like smoke? In the Middle Ages, dreams were never only dreams. They were choices, confessions, weapons and shields. And for women, They were the most private and sometimes the most powerful way to love. Have you ever pressed your ear against a wall and heard sounds travel farther than they should? In the Middle Ages, walls did not only protect, they whispered. Castles, monasteries, and manor houses were built of thick stone, yet those stones carried secrets. Women, trapped within, learned to use those walls as allies, sending messages, hiding signs, even choosing lovers in the silence of echoing halls. Picture a vast castle hall at night. The fire burns low, footsteps fade, and the walls loom heavy with centuries of stone. A woman kneels by a narrow slit in the wall, her lips close to the cold rock. She whispers, "Tomorrow," by the chapel. On the other side, a knight listens, ear pressed to stone, heart pounding as the words reach him faintly. To others, the wall is barrier. To them, it is bridge. Medieval architecture offered chances for secrecy. Spiral staircases allowed fleeting touches in shadow. Tapestries muffled whispers, hiding murmurs of forbidden names. Carved walls carried symbols, hearts etched behind columns, initials scratched into mortar. Some castles even had whispering galleries, curved walls that carried a voice from one end to the other. Women used them not for prayer but for desire. Symbols became language. A flower carved near a chapel door could mean, "I was here." A scratched line beneath a window meant, "Wait tonight." Rings of soot on the wall from a hidden candle meant, "I choose you." Can you imagine walking a hallway, pretending indifference, while your eyes searched desperately for such signs? But danger lurked. Servants were everywhere, and stone carried not only whispers but gossip. A single overheard word could mean ruin. Some women were caught because their signals were too bold. One carved her lover's initials into a church wall, only to be accused of sacrilege. Another left a candle burning in a tower window, only for the wrong man to see. Walls could guard, but they could also betray. Yet the temptation remained. For women confined within stone, the walls themselves became companions. They could imagine them listening, carrying words where lips dared not. To whisper into stone was safer than whispering into air, because the wall, at least, never spoke unless one pressed an ear to it. Humor softened the tension. One tale tells of a lady who tried to whisper to her knight through a wall, only to find her words carried instead to the kitchen. The cook burst out laughing, "So, milady, I am the lion of her heart." The hall roared with laughter for weeks. Another story tells of a husband discovering a carved heart on his wall, only to learn it had been there since his grandfather's time. His wife's secret remained safe, hidden in history itself. But sometimes the walls gave women power. To carve a mark, to send a whisper, was to choose. A lady might decide which knight received her message, which chamber saw her signal, which hallway echoed her steps. Within stone meant to confine them, they created freedom. So imagine yourself walking through a cold corridor, torches sputtering, shadows long. You notice a small flower carved beneath the window, almost hidden. Is it decoration or declaration? Do you pause, touch the mark, claim its meaning? Or do you pass by, leaving the whisper to fade into the silence of stone? In the Middle Ages, walls did not only keep women in. They carried their voices, their symbols, their choices. And within the whispering stone, women dared to love. Have you ever wondered what someone might drink or dare to drink for love in the Middle Ages, where choices for women were restricted and desires hidden? Potions became both salvation and peril. Herbs simmered in secret kettles, powders slipped into wine, charms tied with thread. These were the dangerous tools women used when the heart's whisper needed more than a glance or a ribbon. Picture a dim cottage at the edge of a village. The air smells of sage and smoke, jars line the shelves, each marked with strange symbols. A young woman enters, nervous, clutching a coin. She dares to ask the old healer, "Can you make him love me?" The answer is a small vial of liquid, glowing faintly green in the firelight. To the world, it is superstition. To her, it is hope. Love potions were whispered about everywhere. Some were harmless brews, wine mixed with honey, herbs meant to quicken the pulse. Others were darker, using animal parts, blood, or dangerous plants. Mandrake root was prized for its supposed power to inflame desire. Henbane, deadly in the wrong dose, was rumored to bind passion stronger than vows. To take a sip was to gamble, love, sickness, or death. For women, these potions carried both promise and price. A wife trapped in a loveless marriage might slip herbs into her husband's cup, hoping to stir his affection. A maiden might offer a knight a drink after a hunt, her eyes daring him to swallow. Sometimes it worked, sometimes the man grew warmer, softer, more attentive. Other times nothing changed but suspicion, and suspicion could kill faster than poison. There was humor, too. One tale tells of a woman who gave her suitor what she thought was a love potion, only to discover it was a laxative. He spent the night running instead of wooing, and the village laughed for weeks. Another story speaks of a lady whose potion worked too well. The night followed her everywhere, even to church, until she finally begged the healer for a cure. Next time the healer muttered, "Be careful what you wish for." Yet many women believed fiercely. In a world where voices were silenced, potions gave them agency. To brew, to choose the herbs, to slip a vial into a man's hand, that was decision, power disguised as superstition. Even if it was only wine and honey, belief made it real. Desire needs no science to burn. But danger was never far. Priests condemned love potions as witchcraft. Women accused of using them could face trial, torture, even execution. To be caught with a vial of herbs was to risk ruin. Some women were betrayed by jealous rivals, others by the very men they tried to enchant. To mix potions was to gamble with not only hearts but lives. Still, the stories endure. A ribbon might signal affection, a dream might inspire, but a potion promised certainty, or at least the illusion of it. Can you imagine holding a vial, its liquid dark, the healer's voice whispering, "One sip and he will be yours"? Would you dare to pour it, to watch him drink, to bind his heart by chance and charm? In the Middle Ages, potions were never just herbs. They were choices disguised as superstition, risks bottled in glass, love's gamble poured into a cup. And for women, they were a dangerous, thrilling way to choose their lovers. Have you ever reached the end of a story only to realize the greatest secret was not what you learned, but what you felt? In the Middle Ages, women carried their desires like embers hidden beneath cloaks. They dropped ribbons, whispered through walls, chose colors, danced in shadows, sought answers in dreams and potions. And across centuries, their choices echo, not because of the scandals they caused, but because of the courage they revealed. Picture again the medieval hall, torches flickering, voices rising. A woman stands at its center. She cannot speak her choice aloud. She cannot name the man her heart beats for. But in her glance, her gesture, her laughter, she has chosen. He knows. She knows. And the world outside may never guess. That is the last secret. Love was never silent, even when unspoken. History tells us of kings and knights, of battles and treaties. But hidden in its margins are the women who carved their own fate in symbols, shadows, whispers. They were not passive. They were daring, clever, playful, sometimes reckless. Their secrets remind us that even in the harshest times, hearts found ways to speak. Some gambled with potions, others with color, others with dreams. Some risked shame, others risked death. But all risked because to choose a lover in that world was an act of rebellion, a claim to freedom. And perhaps that is the truest shock, that love itself was the most radical choice of all. There is humor here too, if you listen. A ribbon dropped at the wrong moment, a potion that backfired, a dream misinterpreted. These stories are not only of passion and peril, but of laughter, resilience, humanity. Medieval women chose not only with fire in their hearts, but with wit on their tongues. And so the last secret is this: what we call shocking today was for them survival. To choose was to live. To risk was to breathe. To love was to claim humanity in a world that often denied it. Their whispers are not lost. They reach us still, across stone and parchment, across time itself. And now, they belong to you. So imagine yourself lying in bed tonight, the room dark, the story echoing. What would you do if you lived then? Would you drop the ribbon, whisper through the wall, brew the potion? Would you dare to choose or let the world choose for you? Before you drift to sleep, remember, every glance, every touch, every laugh carries meaning. The medieval women knew this, and so do you. That is their gift, their legacy, their last secret. Thank you for walking this long road with me, through halls and forests, shrines and shadows. If you felt a spark in these stories, let me know. Write a comment below. Share which secret surprised you most, or tell me what mysteries you would like to hear next. And if you have not yet, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, so you won't miss the journeys still to come. Now rest, dear listener. Close your eyes. Let the whispers of the past carry you gently into dreams. For the secrets of medieval women are safe with you now, and in dreams you too may choose.